Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we will discuss about the topic called Logistics Invoice Verification, which is part of LIV process in SAP S/4HANA. LIV is nothing but Logistics Invoice Verification. Now, to recap, when we started the procurement cycle, the first step was creating the purchase requisition. Once the purchase requisition was created, we have learned how to create the purchase order. We have created the purchase order with manually, we have created the purchase order with reference to the requisition. Now, after the purchase order is created, it has been sent to the supplier, right? Once the supplier delivers the material, we will review how the process the goods receipt is. We have completed the goods receipt with reference to the purchase order, and after processing the goods receipt, the next step is logistics invoice verification. This is where we start verifying the invoice sent by the supplier. When the supplier delivers the materials, they also send a copy of the invoice along with it. As consultants, there are a few important points we need to understand before diving into the system directly. I have listed these points, so let us discuss them one after the other, right? When we get into the system, right? First, in invoice verification, there is a point called re-evaluate the material. What does re-evaluation means? During the invoice verification process, the system will re-evaluate the materials. For an example, when we create a purchase order, we will specify a quantity of 50 in the purchase order. The total cost of this quantity is defined, let us say it is 5,000 for 50 units. Now, when we receive the materials, we are indeed receiving those 50 units at the cost of 5,000. However, when we receive the invoice copy, there may be additional charges including along with the cost of the materials. When we receive the invoice copy from the supplier, it often includes the additional charges like transportation cost, packaging cost, and the taxes. These extra charges are mean that the system will re-evaluate the materials value. It's important to note that there will be no impact on the quantities received. You will have the received exact quantity on order. The re-evaluation will only affect the monetary value, not the quantity. This distinction is crucial to remember, right? Now, let's talk about the document types involved in the invoice verification. There are two main documents, the accounting document and material document. Okay. Now, RE is used for the accounting details and RN is used for the materials reevaluation information. So these are the document types which has been provided by the standard SAP. Okay. Now, we observed similar document types during the goods receipt process as well, when both accounting and the material documents were generated, if you remember, right? In invoice verification, we specially have this RE and RN document types. Another important aspect to consider is the number ranges. Just like during the goods receipt, the number ranges in invoice verification will also depend on the company code. When we create the number range, we will notice a new line is added along with the reference number, and there will be a column for an year to help to define the number ranges clearly, right? Now, let us explore the different ways to post an invoice. Invoice can be processed in several ways. They can be posted directly in the system, which is online posting, or through a background job. There is also functionality for parking the invoice before final posting, which allows you to save the invoice temporarily, right? Additionally, we have automatic settlement, which includes the process like evaluated receipt settlements, which is ERS, consignment, and the invoicing platform. We will discuss each of these methods in detail, including the meanings and the implications of posting invoice outline through the background job and the parking process, right? Invoicing posting online in SAP MM is a crucial part of the invoice verification process. When we use the transaction code MIRO for this purpose, right? The system begins the comparing the vendor's invoice details with the information already which is available in the system in the SAP. Especially when we enter the invoice into the system, we refer back to the purchase order which contains the agreed upon pricing. The system automatically pulls the price from the purchase order, allowing for an accurate comparison between the vendor's invoice and the SAP's proposed price. Right? During this online invoice posting process, the system ensures that all the details, including the material cost and any additional charges, match between the vendor's invoice and the information stored in the SAP system. This verification is key to maintain the accurate financial records and ensure that the payments to the suppliers are correctly processed. Okay. Now, let us discuss about the invoice posting in the background. This method allows for the invoice to be processed via job scheduling in the background, essentially instead of manual posting each invoice. Okay. Now, what is this background job? You can set up the system to automatically process them at the scheduled intervals. This is particularly useful for handling a high volume of invoices, as it saves the time and reduces the likelihood of human error. Additionally, there is an option to post the invoice through EDI. EDI is nothing but electronic data interchange, right? This is especially relevant if the supplier is also using the SAP as their ERP system. With EDI, we can send and receive the invoices information electronically, streamlining the entire invoicing process. This is not only enhances the efficiency but also minimize the need for manual data entry which can lead to errors. Okay. Now the next step in the invoice verification process is parking the invoice. Now this parking the invoice which involves the temporary saving the invoice document without posting it to the financial accounts. The transaction code for the parking an invoice in the SAP is MIRO, right? In this step, the employee responsible for invoice verification will input the relevant details, including the purchase order number, okay, and save the invoice document. However, it's important to note that the responsibility of the initial employee is only to park the invoice. They do not finalize the posting. Typically, after parking, another team member, often a senior employee or a manager, will review the parked invoice and post it. This two-step process of parking and posting adds a layer of verification and control, ensuring that the invoice details are accurate before they affect the financial records. Right? Once the invoice is parked, several processes comes into the play, one of which is the automatic settlement process. In SAP MM, the automatic settlement process streamlines the way includes are handled and posted. This process is particularly useful for situations like evaluated receipt settlement (ERS), right? When the system can automatically settle the invoice based on the goods receipts without needing a separate invoice from the vendor. This automatic process not only speeds up the invoicing workflow but also reduces the manual entry errors and the administrative overhead. Okay. Now, by having these controls and the processes in place, organization can enhance the accuracy and the efficiency for their procurement and the invoicing operations. Okay. Now that we have covered the concepts of parking invoices and the automatic settlement processes, we can move on to the next steps in our demonstration. Okay. Now, where we will see all these processes in action within the SAP system, right? The first process we will discuss is evaluated receipt settlement ERS. Okay. In ERS, the supplier does not send an invoice after delivering the goods. Instead, the company automatically posts an invoice based on the goods received and references the purchase order. This process is typically outlined in the terms and conditions agreed upon with the supplier. To execute the ERS in the SAP, we use the transaction code MRRL. This transaction code Okay, this transaction code allows the system to evaluate the goods receipt and create an invoice accordingly. Now, the advantages of ERS is that it simplifies the invoicing process, reduces the paperwork, and minimizes the chances of discrepancies between the goods received and the supplier's invoices. Okay. Next, let's move on to the consignment and the pipeline materials. In this scenario, the supplier's charges are based on the actual consumption for the material rather than the standard invoice. This means that the buyer pays the material only when they are used, which can help manage the cash flow more effectively. The relevant transaction code for processing these types of invoices is MRKO. Using MRKO, the buyer can settle the accounts based on the quantity or consigned materials that have been consumed, ensuring that only pay for what they have actually used. This approach is beneficial for both parties as it allows the supplier to maintain the stock with the buyer while giving the buyers flexibility in managing their cash flow. These processes, ERS and the consignment, are essential for streamlining the procurement and the invoice verification in SAP, which enables the efficient financial management while maintaining the good supplier relationships. Right? In the next step, we will look at how to execute these transactions within the SAP system, and we also see how they function in practical. Okay. Now let us start demonstrating the configurations related to the logistics invoice verification. After that, we will create the logistics invoice as an end user, and we will be completing the direct material procurement process that we have started in one of our previous sections. We have already created the purchase requisition, purchase order, and the goods receipt. Now we need to create the logistics invoice. However, the first we need to complete the necessary configurations, which I will demonstrate you on the SAP system. To start, let us enter the transaction code SPRO and then click on SAP reference IMG and go to the node material management and go to logistics invoice verification, expand the node. Now we will proceed with the configuration step by step. The first option is to define the attributes of system messages, right? The logic behind in this configuration is similar to what I have showed you under the purchasing configuration. I will execute it now and let us take a look. And here double click on define message types for area M8. Now it will be landed on the screen. Now here you can see the various message types already, which is defined by the SAP. You also have an option to create your own message types according to your business requirements, right? Now for an example, if you don't assign a purchase order correctly or enter a wrong purchase order number, the system will generate an error message stating that the purchase order does not exist. It's essential to manage these messages effectively to streamline the invoice verification process, right? In SAP, you can control how these messages are presented by choosing the options such as error, warning, or information. To see the available options, you can also click on the list button. In this message control options, you will notice the several indications. For an example, I represents note in window, E represents an error message, and a hyphen indicates that the message is switched off the message, right? This means that if you don't want to receive any error or a warning message, you can disable them for both online and batch inputs, right? Now, when you click on the list buttons in the warning, so you will see the options to display a warning dialog box or a message type. Okay, so that's it. So this is all the configurations related to the defined message types of system messages. Okay, now let us go back. Similarly, if you double click on the second message option, you will notice it has a different message number that states the multiple purchase orders found for delivery note number. So this is a warning message, which means you can proceed by pressing the enter to bypass it, unlike the error messages, right? Which must be addressed and fixed. Warning messages can be avoided if necessary. Okay. All these messages numbers can be controlled through this transaction code, which allows you to manage how the system interacts with the users during the invoice verification. Right? Now go back again. Next, we will focus on configuring the automatic postings. Execute it. Click on cancel. Now here you will import the system settings for both inventory management and invoice verification transactions for automatic postings to the general ledger account. Remember, the transaction code for this configuration is OMR0. Okay. On the configuration screen now here, click on the account assignment. Now it will access the relevant transaction. This will take you to the OBYC. Okay. Where you can configure the general ledger accounts are required for the integration between the material management and the finance module. Now, if you scroll down and double click on inventory posting, enter the chart of account and then press enter. Now, this will allow you to define how the inventory movements and associated costs are reflected in your financial accounts. This ensures that your accounting records align with your material interactions. As a reminder, I previously explained the concepts of valuation group code, valuation modification, valuation class, and how they relate to the inventory management. Okay. Now here the valuation class 3000 especially represents the raw materials within the material management module. Okay. Now this classification is essential because it determines how the general ledger accounts are assigned when posting the transactions such as goods receipt. In the context of the configurations we are discussing now, this is very important for the accurate accounting representations of raw materials. Now go back. Secondly, let us click on the button GL accounts. Now here you will access the list of general ledger accounts utilized in the account determination process. To see these accounts, you can enter your company code, which is SUK1, and the valuation area SK01, and click on execute. Now here, the system will display all the relevant GL accounts linked to the valuation class you are working with. Okay. This view allows you to review and confirm that the correct accounts are being used for your material transactions. Ensure that all the postings align with your financial reporting requirements. This screen provides a comprehensive overview for all the general ledger accounts assigned for automatic determination and assignment in the material management transactions. Okay. So this feature is invaluable where you want to verify whether the specific general ledger accounts are assigned to any transactions or not. Okay, so that's it. Now go back and then go back again. Okay, now moving on, the third function available in this configuration activity is the simulation. Now click on the simulation button. Now enter the plant SK01 and the valuation class. Let us use 3000, which represents the raw materials. Now after entering these particular details, you can select the transaction type, which says the material ledger settlement. Now to view the associated account assignments, now place the cursor on the material ledger settlement and click on account assignment button. Now the system will display the general ledger accounts associated based on the combination of the plant, company code, valuation area, and the valuation grouping. Okay. Now here this simulation screen acts as a valuable tool providing the insight to which the general ledger accounts are linked to the specific posting lines. If any accounts are missing, what will happen? The system will indicate that as well. For an example, if you are checking the material ledger settlement and find out that a certain account has not been created for the relevant company code SUK1, the system will notify you. You can navigate through this information using the first and the last page buttons or by scrolling down the additional pages if available. Now this functionality helps you to quickly identify if any discrepancies in the account assignments. Okay. Additionally, you can also explore the valuation classes for the other categories. So let us click on the list button again and choose the trading goods. Okay. And represented by the valuation class, which is 3100. Okay. By entering the values and executing this, okay, you will also see the necessary accounts that has been updated correctly, particularly for the inventory posting. Okay. Overall, this simulation features allow you to troubleshoot effectively when the users encounter the issues related to the missing general ledger accounts. If any user is coming and asking for the specific details about the plant or evaluation class and the document they are posting, document means it could be a goods receipt or a logistic invoice. Okay, you can use this tool to pinpoint and resolve the problems effectively. Okay, so that's it. So this is all about the configurations related to the automatic postings. Now let us go back again. Our next activity is incoming invoice configuration. Let us focus on number assignments under the Logistics Invoice Verification settings. Expand the node and execute the option Maintain number assignments for the accounting documents. Now here you will see the document types, number ranges and the document IDs related to the invoice verification. Now let us start by clicking the document type option. This will take you to the familiar screen, similar to what we have encountered when configuring the goods receipt in our previous section. It is important to understand which document types are utilized in the logistics invoice verification, right? The standard document types that the system automatically selects for the posting the logistics invoices are RE, which represents the invoice gross, and RK represents the invoice reduction, and RN represents the invoice net. Okay. Now, what we will do, let us double click on RE and we will check the details. Okay. Double click on it and you will see that the associated number range information for the document type is RE. Okay. Next, we need to ensure that the number range is 51 exits. Okay. Now click on the button, number information, and enter the relevant company code. Now after entering the details, now click on intervals and scroll down to confirm the existence of the number range. Okay. If the number range 51 is indeed available, you can navigate back. Okay. You can go back. Additionally, to gain a comprehensive overview, you can click on overview button. Now, after clicking the overview button, this action will provide you a summary of the number ranges, confirming that the number range 51 is present. Okay. So once you have verified this, you can go back to the previous screen, and this process ensures that all the configurations regarding the document types and the number ranges are appropriately set for the logistics invoice verification. Okay. Now, next, it is important to ensure that the document type RK is also configured and it allows the material accountment types. So this particular setting is very important whether there is a need to return the materials to the suppliers, as the system will automatically pick up the reversed document type in such instances. Now what we will do, let us see the number ranges for the invoice reduction. Okay. Now if you could see here, which is 53. Okay. To do this, click on number information, enter the company code, and select the intervals. After scroll down and check if the number range 53 is existing or not. Okay. As you could see here, the 53 number range does not exist. Okay, now what we need to do, we need to create it. Now to create the missing number range, click the button here to add a new interval and enter 53 as the starting point and double nine as the ending point here. Now after making these entry, enter the number ranges. Next, it's important to check the document types used for the invoice verification. Okay, click the button to view the document types related to the invoice verification. The transaction code MIRO or MIRO is used to enter the incoming logistics invoice. By double-click on or selecting the relevant entries and click the Details button. Here you can see the further configurations including the which document types are utilized for posting the logistics invoice and which types are applied to the invoice reductions. This setup is important because in some cases, user may enter the transaction code and the document type might not be automatically picked up by the system. Now to avoid such issues, ensure that the configuration, especially the default values for the document types is correctly set up. Okay. If everything is in order, the system will automatically select the appropriate document type without requiring the manual entry. Right. Now once you have confirmed these settings, so what we will do, we will go back. We'll go back again. Next, we need to maintain the number assignment for the logistic documents. Expand the relevant node, execute the transaction to assign the number ranges, and you will be landed on the screen where the various transactions is already been displayed. Okay. Now here, if you could see the document type which represents the posting and invoice and the other document types which is for cancelling on the reversing and the invoice. Okay. And you can also see the number ranges is associated with the transactions is 01. Now, to ensure that this number range exists or not, what you will do, we will go back and execute the option to maintain the number range intervals for the invoice documents. Okay, execute it. Go to the interval sections. You should here you should see that the number range 01 exists. Okay, and the from number to number range. Now, it's important to note that the document type we typically use to post the logistics invoices is RE by default. Okay. Now, this verification is crucial to ensure that the integrity of our invoice processing system and to confirm that all the necessary configurations are in place for seamless operations. Okay. Now, let's go back. Go back again. Now, check the next configurations related to the tax treatment in invoice reduction. Execute it and you will be directed to this screen. Here, when you can position your view to check the assigned company codes, here you can see how the tax for invoice reduction is treated. By default, the tax reduction is carried out in the complaint document for invoice reduction. However, if you want to wish to change this and to apply the tax reduction to the original document instead, you have that option. Okay. When you make this change, the system will generate two accounting documents for the invoice reduction, right? Here, the first document reflects the original data from the invoice sent by the supplier, while the second document contains all the relevant information about the invoice reduction itself. Now, this dual document creation is essential for maintaining the clear and the accurate financial records, right? Next, we can specify a complaint reason to clarify why an invoice item is being reduced. Okay, this is particularly important as it aligns with the business requirements and interval controls. For an example, let us take examples of complaint reasons might include the instances of faulty goods or incorrect materials being delivered. So it's important to document these reasons to maintain the transparency and the accountability within the invoicing processes. Okay. Now let us move back to the continuing with our configurations. Right. Next configuration we will look at is the maintaining the default values for the tax code. Execute it. And now here check your company code and you can see it does not currently exist. So we can scroll up and double click on the company code 0001 to access its settings. Now here in this activity you can set a default tax code for domestic transactions and also establish a tax code for the unplanned delivery cost, right? So what we will do, we will copy the settings from our company code 0001 and replace it with our company code SUK1. While you can select a specific tax code for the unplanned delivery cost, I recommend leaving it blank. Okay. And in many organizations, user may select the different tax codes when posting the invoices, especially if the supplier are located outside the country. Okay. Now this flexibility is important because it accommodates the varying the tax regulations and practices. Right. Once you have set these parameters, hit save and it will create a new customizing request. Press enter to continue and the data has been saved. That's it. Now you can do the same activity for your second company code, which is US company code. Save. So that's it. We are done with the configuration now. Now go back again. Now let's move on to the next configuration is alright. Our next configuration is configuring the unplanned delivery cost. Okay. Now here we will configure how the unplanned delivery costs are posted. As you have seen earlier, the option for the unplanned delivery cost appears in the logistics invoice under the details tab. Okay. Now to proceed with this configuration, let us execute the transaction and check the settings for your company code. Now, when you click this list button, you will see two primary options for how the unplanned delivery cost can be handled. Distribute among invoice terms. If this option is left blank, the system will automatically distribute the unplanned delivery cost among the invoice items. For an example, if the unplanned delivery cost is £50 and there are two items on the invoice, the cost will be split equally between them, resulting in £25 for each item, right? Similarly, for the second option, which is different general ledger line, if you select this option, it means the unplanned delivery cost will be posted to a specific general ledger account rather than being distributed across the invoice items. In this case, you will need to specify the general ledger account in the provided field. This could be an expense account that directly offsets the unplanned delivery cost incurred. Okay. Once you have made this choice regarding how to post the unplanned delivery cost, ensure that you save the configurations to apply the settings for the future transactions. Okay. If everything looks good, click save to finalize the configurations. Okay. Now go back and then go back again. Right. Next, we will configure the supplement text in the invoice verification. This setup ensures that the purchase order supplement text is displayed when an incoming invoice is entered against a specific purchase order. Execute it and you will be landed on this screen. Now here, locate the section for the purchase order text general. Use the position button to find your company code. Right. At the moment, you may notice that the option for using the supplement text is not currently enabled. Click on the checkbox for the below text option. This setting indicates that a notification will be sent to the purchasing department when a header text is created for a specific purchase order. Right. The next configuration is the notifiable purchase order text types. Okay, execute it. Now, this screen list varies the text type that can trigger the notifications for the invoice verification clerk. The purpose of this setting is to ensure that the invoice clerk receives a message if any notifiable below text exists for the purchase order against which they are entering the logistics invoice. For an example, if text type FO3 represents the term of payment, it will notify the invoice clerk when they create the invoice, ensuring that they are aware of any relevant details related to that purchase order. Okay. Now check if your company is already listed. If not, you can create a new entries by clicking the new entries. That's it. These are the options for the configurations. Now go back. Next, we will define a mail notification to the purchasing department when the price variances occurs. Execute it. If your company code does not exist in the list, ensure to check if does not exist and mark the checkbox to auto mail the purchasing department when price variances occur. Okay. The mail will be sent to the purchasing department when the price variances occur. Right. This is all about the configurations regarding this. That's it. Now go back. Finally, we will activate the direct posting to general ledger and the material accounts and the assets. We will come back to the supplier specific tolerances in the next lecture. In this lecture, we will focus on configuring the direct postings to the general ledger, material accounts, and assets. Execute it. In this relevant transaction, to access whether the posting can be made during the invoice entry and the document parking, by default, the direct posting into the logistics invoice verification is enabled. So no changes are needed unless the business user requests otherwise. Okay, go back. Next, we will define the logo that appears on the logistics invoice verification screen for each company code. You can enter the desired logo here and ensure to mark the display logo option to activate this feature. Okay, now go back. Now, here we have already set up search for duplicate invoices while posting the goods receipt. If you need a refresher on this topic, please review the relevant lecture. Okay. Now let's proceed to clearing the account maintenance. Expand this section. Now here maintain the number assignments for the accounting documents related to the clearing accounts. Okay. This step allows you to configure how to clear your clearing accounts, particularly for freight and customs. In case of quantity variances between the goods receipt and the invoice receipt that cannot be settled. Okay, now let us execute this. Okay, now we have to maintain the number assignments for the accounting documents and the selected document type. Now the document type typically used for the account maintenance is KP. Ensure that the number range exists for this document type. Especially check the number range 48 is available. That's it. Once it is confirmed, go back again. We also need to verify the document type for the invoice verification. Okay.
Execute the relevant transaction and check the default value that is already defined KP. Okay, if necessary, you can update this a custom document type based on the business requirement. Go back. Next, we will maintain the range for the account maintenance documents. The document type 04 is assigned to KP. Verify that it exists with the appropriate number ranges. Okay, now go back. Go back. Now let's look at the invoice verification in the background. Expand this section. Execute the option. Now to define the automatic statistics, here you can set whether an invoice posted in the background should be marked as a verified as correct or completed. To set the correct invoices as completed, mark the appropriate checkbox. Look for your company code. Now here, check both the set corrective invoice to completed and US checkboxes. Okay, that's it. Hit save and you will have a new customizing request. Press enter to continue and the data has been changed. Now this configuration will be relevant when posting the invoices in the background. If you are curious about how to post invoices in the background, you can access it through the logistics folder under the material management in the SAP Easy Access screen. Okay, the transaction code MIRO and MIRA allow you to enter the invoice for the invoice verifications in the background. Okay, so that's it. We have completed the basic configurations required for the LIV in the SAP S/4HANA. Okay, now this configurations, all this configuration determines the status assigned to the invoices posted in the background. If you want the status to be completed, mark the checkbox. Otherwise, you can set it to verified. Okay, that's it. We are done, and I will proceed to the next activity.